everyone, I'm Melanie from Healthy Body Nutrition, and I'm here with Billie from Early Start Numeracy and Literacy, and we're here to talk to you today about school readiness. I'm a clinical nutritionist and I work primarily with children. I do one-on-one consultations dealing with anything from digestive issues, anxiety, skin issues, and I really like helping children to concentrate and focus from a food-based approach, which can be really beneficial in school. What about you, Billie?
Hi. So I am a teacher and formerly a preschool teacher that worked in an early childhood setting. I saw a need for children to work in a smaller setting, assisting needs and building that confidence in preparation to transition to school. So that's a big passion of mine, and that's what led me to setting up my classes, which I run small group and one-to-one classes, assisting individual needs in different areas, and obviously implementing a lot of confidence just to set them out for the most positive and happy start before starting school.
Yeah, because it can be very nerve-wracking, I think, for parents, which is why we wanted to run this, because your child, especially if it's your first that's starting big school, can be a big transition. There can be a lot of anxiety from kids and parents, so we just want to try and help with some of that anxiety. So I'm going to ask Billie a few questions about numeracy and literacy to start with. So what do you think is the importance of school readiness for young children?
So look, the most important thing is having that little bit of early intervention, seeing where your child sits developmentally. For me, it's definitely the most important is children having their social and emotional skills intact, having that self-esteem, their fine motor skills, their communication skills, having a look at all of those areas leading up to transitioning to big school and seeing, what areas need that little bit more support in, or they don't need any support in that area. There might be something else that they're really needing. So what I found in a bigger setting is every child's an individual learner, and some children require things that might not be able to be done in such a big setting. They need that little bit more nurturing, and that also that understanding and a bit more preparation and programming for that specific child's needs. The most important thing though I feel is looking at all the skills needed in preparation for school readiness, the self-help skills, feeling that independence of being able to do things independently, the fine motor skills, being able to use tools to manage, writing and endure any cutting activities, or things that really use those small fine motor skills. Language skills, being able to communicate not with just the teachers but their peers for their needs, and also to be able to just communicate and form those social relationships, and being able to follow instruction and really sustain the whole day and what's going on, change and instruction. So a lot of things.
I think lots of parents just want that transition to be really easy for their child, don't they?
Easy, positive, and that's what we do.
Yeah, okay. So what are some of the important areas that you might look out for in a child to see whether they're ready for school or not?
Okay, so the biggest one for me was definitely social and emotional. So if a child is really finding it hard to separate emotionally, they're not coping during the day, they're still falling apart, they're not being able to, sit and enjoy certain activities or form those friendships, or really, be in the moment and transition from different activities. I see that as an area, we need to keep building on, don't rush them off. If that's something towards the end of the year they're still struggling with. Definitely, like I said, fine motor is something I'm extremely passionate about. Also communicating with teachers. If a child is really finding it difficult to cut or to hold a pencil or any sort of equipment for a long period of time, or even a short period of time, that's going to really affect their writing ability and obviously finishing activities as well. So I really like to focus on lots of activities to encourage that fine motor skill and build on those. Mm-hmm. And again, that early intervention of being able to see these different areas really gives that child a lot more, of a chance to step into that setting with that confidence needed. Some of the other important things I look out for, again, are language skills. So being able to, communicate their needs, being able to ask for assistance if needed.
That's a big one, isn't it? A lot of kids will sit there and not say anything, will they?
Yeah.
When they need the help.
That's right. They're sort of hold back, whereas, you want to sort of teach them it's okay to ask a question, or it's okay to ask your peer as well if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed. So also introducing yourself, as simple as that, or finding someone you've got something in common with. So all those little factors, also being able to answer questions or follow instructions, or be able to, just make a connection to form that real bond with your peers and teacher as well.
Yeah, great. Okay. So how important do you think is language and literacy for school?
So look, I've got a lot of parents that panic and think, oh, should my child know to how to read before starting school? But I always say this is the time now, this early stage, to really focus on building the love of literacy, whereas children are exploring letters, letter sounds, how print and letters work in our environment, how words are made, how it all makes sense and put together. So for me, reading is important, but it comes later. So we've got to build that big foundation before we start reading. So literacy is definitely a huge passion and a huge thing for children to build. So just forming simple sentences is a starting point. When you start to hear your child for the first time put a few words together, you get so excited. You think, oh, they've put together a little sentence. But then they learn how to structure it and then extend. So playing around with words, reading, lots and lots of reading to the child, basically giving them just that world of, engaging in different words, how words work, giving them the opportunity as well to talk about print, what they see, what they feel, what they can guess is happening. Again, playing around with letters, looking at their name, the letters in their name, can they make connections with, things that begin with their name, rhyming, syllables. There's a whole stepping stone prior to, to reading. So building towards that. And literacy, again, it's huge. So there's so much. It's how we question things, how we answer things, how we talk about things, how, children learn to make understanding. So, yeah.
I actually remember thinking about it, my kids going through school and the teachers talking about it's all very well that they can read the story, but they need to be able to understand the story, and then when they're reading it aloud to be able to give explanation and
a bit of expression.
So it's interesting that you talk about that, because it's more than just the reading, right? It's the understanding that comes with it.
Absolutely. So like you said, the comprehension side, being able to retell or talking about the characters, or even making a connection, saying, oh, that happened to me, or something like that, or just being able to have that enjoyment of a funny story, or even touching on emotions in something that might be oh, that was a bit sad, or how did that make you feel? It just gives you so much. But it's great for children to have that starting point and build on prior to, that's right, just being able to read everything. It's more about the understanding and the enjoyment.
Yeah, so taking the pressure off needing to read and just the comprehension. And what about numeracy?
Numeracy, the same thing. For me, what I find, parents have a bit of a mixed idea of what it is that children need before starting school. So what I try to explain is, what I like to do is the basics. The basics are the most important part to anything. When we are learning, once we have the basics, we can build on that. So when children are learning their numbers, a lot will rote learn. So they'll know, I can count to 10 and backwards from 10. But what we need to delve into as well is understanding what the number looks like. How is that number made up of? So visually we can see, we can also touch it, we can make it. How do those numbers work? So what I can't even believe some of the age, the students I work with already know odd and even, because what they can see and touch and make understanding of, it's incredible what they'll take in. But often when we talk about numbers, you're expected to go, oh, I can count 1 to 30. But if we've made, like teachers have often said too, if I ask a child to start at 12 and count to 20, they get a bit lost because it's a bit out of order.
Yeah, they haven't done the rote learning of that.
That's right. So it's about understanding where that number's sitting, the before and after strategy, understanding, oh, that's a larger number, that's a smaller number. How do we know all these things? How are we going to learn that about a number? So that's the importance of numeracy. It's also just understanding amounts, understanding how numbers work, and it's just huge, but it's so exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about the foundations, because that's one thing I've noticed. I've got 2 boys in primary school, and I find that they're understanding these complex things because they have that basic understanding of how things work. And especially I find when they started using they teach very differently now. Like when they were using thras, and I know that they're not using that now, but the phonetics and all that and making the sounds, I'm finding my kids are able to pronounce words that I never could at that age, because they've got that understanding of the sounds that those letters or the groups of letters make, rather than just memorising the word.
Absolutely. That phonemic and phonetic understanding.
That's the word. Yep. See, that's why that's your specialty, not mine. Okay, so what are some of the strategies that you use with kids to build skills?
Okay, so what I've noticed is every child's an individual learner. So some children can work it out in their head. I've watched it and I'm amazed. I'll sit there and think, wow. Then there are other children that are visual learners as well. Auditory, there's a whole different, learning way out there. So some of the strategies I use, I basically build it off getting to know the child. So once I understand how that child learns, and I really love finding that out, what I do is I program basically the learning to cater for their, learning abilities. So what I find is always very effective is the visual. There is nothing wrong with having mountains of materials out on the table. I find children really thrive from that.
People say children are visual learners, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
And we are too.
Yeah,
I think
I agree.
The more like you look at something and you take it in, we really enjoy that. There's a sense of a bit more of, I don't know, there's just some enjoyment that you get out of it. So what I like to do, the strategies that I use is basically, if there's an area that I'm feeling, that child has a need in, so say for instance, numeracy or literacy, I will plan out something where it's really engaging and fun, because gone are the days you've got your worksheets, and worksheets are great. I'm not saying anything about worksheets because I also incorporate those, but for me it's really about putting something in front and problem solving. So using those strategies, if we're doing a subtraction for instance, having that amount, so it's collecting that amount, tick, I can see the child has an understanding of the amount. Now, when we subtract and using that fancy word, that also means take away. So we're going to remove, and using all these little fancy bits, getting them again to take away and then to recount. So we're using so many different strategies. Same with literacy. So when they're learning about letters, it's not just here is the letter, this is the name, this is a sound. We're getting some pictures. We're involving different things to connect with that letter. So we're making it fun. And what I tend to do as well, so it's not so overwhelming for students, but make fun games. So where they're a part of it, they're moving around also. So find this letter, go and see if you can find it in my room. It's like making like a little hunting game or something that is appealing and engaging for the child. So
that's probably good for kids that maybe don't sit still that well. They can get up and move around.
Absolutely.
That's great. And they do incorporate a lot of that into schools now, don't they?
They
I'm
are.
noticing that as well.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's a real benefit.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to change things up a bit and just ask you, what do you feel the role of confidence plays in kids when they're starting school?
It is absolutely huge and vital. Confidence, look, not everyone's born with confidence. It's something we're working on all the time. And I think the importance for children is understanding they do have an ability. Everybody has their own ability, and it's just finding it and having someone that can also help foster that ability. So confidence is huge, because what confidence gives us is that acceptance to go, okay, if I don't get it right, it's okay, I'll just try again. It gives you that confidence to go, I want to put my hand up because I might not get the right answer, but I might, there's a chance.
Yeah.
So that's that part of confidence. Confidence gives us also that feeling of, it's okay, I've got this, I'll work out a way. I'll work out a way and I'll keep learning. I'll keep moving towards what I have to do. So I think as children go on, they slowly build on that, and it's really beautiful to see, because you sometimes, and what I found as well in a preschool setting was, you would see sometimes a group of children that would withdraw and hold back a little bit because they weren't sure, or they were a little bit shy, or they just
dominating personalities.
Absolutely, you've got a lot of dominating personalities, very excitable children, so they sort of took a step back, and for me that was the group that I really wanted to focus on, to pull that little bit of confidence out, to give them that little bit of you've got this, give it a go. And even if you didn't really feel like you had it that time, try again another day. And they start to see, hey, this isn't so bad. This is actually fun. I've got a chance now. I can do this. So it is so vital, and it's just really beautiful to see. And like I said, it's a ongoing, thing that you constantly sort of keep building on. And just wonderful to see when
you've
children got it.
You've spoken to me about watching your children that come in here really boost their confidence, and I think that's the big thing, isn't it? A lot of kids that if they're struggling, they don't have that confidence, and therefore they're not likely to try. So it's so important and a lot of schools now talk about resilience and wanting to build resilience. And I think confidence and resilience really go hand in hand, don't they?
They certainly do. Confidence and resilience definitely go hand in hand, because again, it's that, like I said, when they walk in and they're unsure, but then they walk back in, they go, well, you know what? I sort of have this. I know that this can be possible. Yeah. And like you said, I have had students that have come in, and parents have also expressed concern, they're not really talkative, or they're not really, confident in this area. And by the time we've worked on those areas, this child has transformed from what was once super quiet to now, we're not going to be quiet for very long.
Yeah, they come into themselves.
Yeah, they really do.
Personalities come out. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, beautiful to see.
Okay, I think you touched on this before about how you embrace a child's interest when they're all having different learning styles.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's just getting to know the child, really understanding how they learn, making it engaging, making it fun and interesting, and really planning and programming for that specific need. So, really finding out what it is that they need work on, and just building that in confidence and love.
Yeah, okay, great. And so after everything that we've talked about, what would you say is your take-home message for parents who've got kids starting school soon?
My take-home message would basically be just nurture and value every child as an individual in their learning areas. It's just understanding that all children's needs and abilities are different. Focus on their strengths, really focus on their strengths, and just build on all the other areas as they go. And look, learning is a journey, and it should just be a really happy journey. We want them to have the most positive, enjoyable start, and that's what I love seeing children do, transition with the most happy, positive start, and then hearing from the parents, they just love it. That is the best news you can get back. So yeah.
You're so passionate about what you do, which is what I love. So if people want to find out more about you, how can they reach out?
You can go onto my website, which is www.earlystart.net.au, or you can email me at billie@earlystart.net.au. I also have an Instagram, but I don't know my Instagram off by heart. So you can just pop on Early Start, and that should hopefully pop up. I'm getting there.
You've got a logo with like a tree and letters on it, don't you?
I do. Logo with tree and letters. So definitely pop on and check it out. Yeah.
She's great. Check her out.
Thank you. Now I want to ask you a couple of questions.
Okay, let's go.
When I first spoke to you, Melanie, one of the biggest things that appealed to me, and something I've also noticed, is your passion about families and children and their nutritional needs. So tell me a bit about why you're so passionate about it.
Well, I guess I'm a mum, and I've seen a lot of change in myself, in my family. I've seen what an impact nutrition can have. And I guess the reason I started working with kids, I was trying to kind of figure out where I wanted to go when I finished my study, and women was a really big passion of mine, but kids were as well. And I kind of made the decision that when I'm helping the children, I'm really helping the mums, because it can cause a lot of stress and anxiety feeding your kids if you feel like they've got nutritional needs that they're not being met, or you just feel like something's not quite right that you want help with. So that's really where it is for me. And like you, I just love seeing my kids come in, and when they leave, they're so much happier, and I've helped them in a really meaningful way that
it is so valuable, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it.
And what kind of foods would you recommend for concentration?
Okay, so one of the biggest things I talk about for concentration and food is actually not a particular group of foods or anything like that. It's blood glucose levels. So I've got a little thing here. So let's just pretend that this is like the ideal range where you want your blood glucose levels to be. So that's just like the energy for your cells. A lot of foods these days are very processed, a lot of refined carbohydrates, And it can really affect your concentration when your levels are all over the place. And the example I'll give is if you, for example, your child's having a really sugary breakfast, like Cocoa Pops or something, what happens is the blood sugar levels go up really quick because it digests really easily and they get in there really quick. So it's got a high amount of sugar, but it gets into the bloodstream really quickly. And when it comes out of this range, the body doesn't like that, and it responds by pumping insulin into your body to get it out of the bloodstream. But when it gets high like this, it's kind of an emergency situation. So it comes hard and fast. The insulin comes hard and fast, which what happens is it comes down really quickly, and then you get below range. And this is an emergency situation as well, and your body starts releasing cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So let's say you've had your cereal, your blood sugar goes up, it comes back down. It's recess time now, maybe we're going to have a cookie, goes back up. They run around, burn it off, the insulin kicks in, goes low again. Maybe we're having a jam sandwich for lunch, or honey, something that's another refined carb. There's not really a lot of protein happening. Goes back up and it goes back down again. So you can see that they're spending a lot of time outside of this range. And a lot of people, when they think about sugar in kids, they think, oh, that's sugar high, that they're going to get really crazy and hyperactive. But what I find is more of a concern is these low levels, because this is when the body is really going, I don't have enough here, I don't have enough glucose for my brain, and your brain really likes glucose. So kids won't necessarily look lethargic like we might do in the afternoon. They might get hyperactive, they might get fidgety, they might get emotional, they might get angry or hangry. And if you have a child that's got anxiety, this is like an atomic bomb. Like, you do not want to get them here, because it's just going to really exacerbate everything. So the biggest thing I would say for concentration is you need to maintain really regular blood sugar levels. And the way you do that is to avoid the really refined carbohydrates that are targeted right at kids, that kids love. Kids are what I call carbivores. They love carbs. Part of it's because it's easy to digest. Quite often it's got good flavour. It's quick, it's easy, and they just like to, all kids, they're snacks, right? They love snacking. So I would avoid those really sugary foods. And if you've got a child that's seemingly always hungry, this could be an explanation that they're constantly going through this up and down and they're not getting... So
that's a good indication.
Yeah, so a classic example I give is my two boys. They're very similar but very different. If they don't have time to eat their lunch at school, as soon as I pick them up, I can tell, because the little one gets angry and the older one's really emotional. Like, he gets really teary over the strangest things, and I just go to them, did you eat your lunch? Oh no, I didn't have time. And then get some food into them, and they're a different child within 5 minutes. So you know, you can't always avoid them skipping lunch, but I just try and give them food that's going to keep them satiated for longer. And the best thing that you can do is start with a really good breakfast. It's got protein, so eggs, some yogurt, you can have sausage. There's lots of different things that you can have. Even if you're sprinkling some nuts and seeds on your cereal, just adding that little bit of protein and minimising the refined carbohydrates. And if you're not quite sure what a refined carbohydrate is, I do the saliva test, which isn't as gross as it sounds, which is if you put it in your mouth and it starts to dissolve in your mouth, then it's a refined carbohydrate, because you've got the enzymes in your mouth to digest carbohydrates.
Right.
So if you put a teaspoon of sugar in your mouth, it's going to dissolve really quickly, whereas if you put an apple in your mouth, the fibre is going to stop it from dissolving really quickly. Or if you put a piece of steak, which is largely protein, it's not going to dissolve very quickly. So kids don't like to chew a lot. They're busy, and that's where that whole carbivore thing comes from. And the other thing I would do is just mention about avoiding additives, because they're in a lot of foods, and there's multiple additives in these foods.
It's hard, isn't it, these days?
It's really hard. You just need to, you know, and I'm realistic. I don't expect everyone to be eating salads and things like that. I know that kids eat packaged foods. We all, you know, we live in a busy world. It's just about choosing the right snacks and just pairing it with stuff that's going to keep the blood sugar levels balanced.
And you've mentioned also not taking it all away, but almost just regulating how much you
that's it. Like, my kids still have food from a packet, but I'm very mindful about what they can and can't have. So it could be as simple as, if your child eats rice crackers, choosing the unflavoured ones, the plain ones, because the flavoured ones often have flavourings in them that can affect children. And it's actually well known that there's 50 additives that have been, well, there's more than 50 in food, but there's been 50 that we know actually cause adverse reactions in some people.
Yeah.
Might not be everyone, but some of those things are insomnia and hyperactivity. So if you've got a child that's, you know, susceptible to those side effects, you're feeding them at school, it's going to be really hard for them to concentrate while they're in class.
Yeah, that's what you want to avoid, don't we?
That's it. I know it's great, like you ship them off to school and they're kind of, you don't have to deal with it, but obviously you want them to have the easiest time possible in learning.
That's right.
So.
And what about allergies?
Okay, so I know a lot of parents have either got kids with allergies or you're a bit nervous about sending your kid to school with food because of allergies. So the first thing I'd say is you need to check the policy with your school, because different schools have different policies. Some avoid all nuts altogether. Others prefer that you don't bring them, but it's not exactly a rule.
Yeah.
So first of all, you need to know what the policy is with your school. The other thing to keep in mind is that some kids have multiple allergies, so it's not just nuts. Sometimes it can be gluten, dairy, eggs, soy. So it can be really difficult to remove everything from your child's lunch that someone might be allergic to. So the thing that I would probably recommend is checking, as I said, checking with your school. Check with the class teacher, find out if there's a child in your class with allergies, and then you can possibly avoid some of the foods that they're allergic to. Things like baking and birthday parties and bringing in food, not so much now because of COVID, but I do actually have a son with a nut allergy, so I kind of see both sides of it, because I know that it can be very nerve-wracking to think that your child's food could harm somebody else.
That's right.
But the other thing is, Anaphylaxis Australia doesn't actually recommend schools going nut-free, because children aren't learning that empathy, they're not learning how to navigate around someone with allergies. So it's that fine line of kind of wanting to educate your kids.
Absolutely.
You don't want kids with allergies going into the world thinking that the whole world is going to protect them, because they need to be diligent about their own allergies. So it's that fine line. But with baking and birthday parties and things like that, some parents are really lovely and want to, you know, make a gluten-free cake or a nut-free cake, and it's a really nice gesture. But if you have a child with allergies, quite often the parent will provide an alternative snack, because we don't want to put anybody at risk. If you're not an allergy parent, you probably don't really realise the depths of diligence that you need to go to.
Yeah,
so when it comes to that, you don't have to necessarily, I wouldn't be making an almond cake, but, you know, just make what you want to make for your child, and the parents of the child with the allergy can give them something as an alternative. They can send in a little chocolate or a lolly, so the child doesn't feel like they're missing out. They've been missing out their whole life. They're used to it. I know it's a bit sad.
I know,
but they are used to it. And they're resilient.
Yeah, they're resilient
about
but
it.
Again, children are amazing. They do.
And the other thing I wanted to say, with parents of children with allergies, it can be very nerve-wracking sending your child to school. But please know that there are very strict procedures in place at schools. They have action plans. The teachers know what to do, and the teachers are worried about your kids too. They don't want your child, you know, getting an allergy. So, for example, my son was in a class with a boy that did have a gluten, an egg, a soy, and a nut allergy, and they actually ate outside because they just couldn't avoid cross-contamination on the desks.
Yeah.
So they do have procedures. They do cater for it. So I just wanted to put your mind at rest, if you are an allergy parent, that there are a lot of procedures in place, and you can always obviously talk to your school.
Well, I definitely know in the preschool or early childhood settings, they've got great procedures and a great, way of, regulating and being really careful with children's diets.
Yeah, they do. But like going into primary school, it's a bit different. They can't be as strict. And I guess the other thing is, as I said, being an allergy mum, like my younger child is very aware of his brother's nut allergy. He knows if he's having nuts, because we do have nuts in the home, but he knows that I sit at the table and I eat them from a container. I wash my hands. I don't sit in my brother's spot at the table. I wash my hands, I wash my face, and he always alerts his brother to the fact that I'm eating nuts, don't come near me. So he's very he's aware of it. But if you've got a child who's not exposed to somebody with nut allergies, you're not necessarily going to know that. So that's why I think it's not the end of the world if children are exposed to other kids that do have those allergies, because they can breed empathy and understanding.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's always, you hear about these stories in high school when kids just don't have that empathy, and they're, daring kids to eat foods that they're allergic to. And I think if you're exposed to the real world of what it's like, then you're a lot more likely to be more empathetic and understanding.
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Very important.
Yeah.
And any tips for healthy habits when starting school?
Yeah, okay. So the thing I would say is that when you're starting school, it's a blank slate. So start at the beginning of the year, and if you put in some measures, you can hopefully avoid some of the battles. So some of the things I would say is, number one, implementing the habits from day one. So you're going to big school, this is what we're going to have in the lunchbox. We're not going to have any of this. We're not going to have that. A lot of schools do like crunch and sip or move and munch.
Yep.
And what I find is I very early on told my kids, we do vegetables. The option is fruit or vegetables, but most kids will happily eat lots and lots of fruit. Sometimes the vegetables is a bit more challenging.
Yeah.
So we do veggies for crunch and sip. And that's just our rule.
Yep.
We've started, they don't really question it, because by the time they start thinking, oh, those kids have got fruit, it's already a well-established habit.
Right.
So the other thing is choosing a variety of snacks that you're happy to include. So as I said, snacks is a part of life. We can't really avoid it. But, you know, if your kids want roll-ups and this and all these, you know, sugary things that you're not necessarily that happy with, I would recommend going to the supermarket, choosing 10 maybe different packaged foods that you're happy for your child to have, that you can rotate throughout the year, and giving them a little bit of choice. What do you want this muesli bar? Do you want a pack of popcorn? Do you want this and that? So they don't feel like they're not getting packaged food, but it's still within your parameters of what you're happy to have. Because any parent who has kids at school, I know we both do, it's a slippery slope. You know, sometimes you let one thing in, and then by the time you get to week 10 of term, things have gotten a little bit out of control, and then school holidays happen, and then week 1 it's like, okay, back on track. So as much as you can to avoid kind of slipping into those discretionary foods.
And this is where I think you're a breath of fresh air, because I think, like, even myself, even though my boys aren't in school anymore, but one of the challenges I found was, what do I pack? What do I include in their lunchbox that's balanced, that works, that's not just about convenience, rush, don't have time for this, but I have a feeling it's healthy, or I'm not too sure it's healthy.
Yeah.
So how can we provide like a balanced lunchbox? What would you tell parents?
So the nutrients that you need to look at for a lunchbox is you focus on carbohydrates, protein or fat. As I said, carbohydrates, pretty easy with kids. There's lots of carby foods out there. I talked before about the difference between the refined and the complex carbs. So, you know, rice crackers, they are a little bit more of a refined carb, but they're not too bad. And especially if you're pairing it with some protein. Like, I see some really beautifully healthy lunchboxes out there where there's some fruit, there's some carrot sticks, a little bit of popcorn, a little bit of rice crackers, but what I'm not seeing is that protein that's going to actually fill them up.
I see.
So even though fruit, great, amazing, like if you're hungry and you have a bit of fruit and some carrot, it's not necessarily going to fill you up and hit that spot. So carbohydrates, definitely very, very important for children. Just we don't want it to be the only source of food that they're having. So protein, the common mistake is people don't put enough protein in there. So you've got your animal proteins like some meat, eggs, you can do chickpeas, there's some beautiful roasted chickpeas that you can buy from the health food aisle.
Okay.
Even if you did like a pasta that there's like a lentil pasta that you can get that's got a little bit more protein in it. I'm just trying to think what else. Yogurt, cheese, they're all really good sources of protein that's going to help fill them up. And sometimes some kids, like lunchtime might be the first time that they get a decent serve of protein, or sometimes it might be dinner time.
That's quite a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a long time to go without. And then fat is so there's 3 macronutrients, carbs, protein and fat. So fat is, so cheese and yogurt have got some fat in them too. Avocado, what else? You can do like a hummus. Any animal product will have some fat in it. But I do actually have a lunchbox handout on my website that people can have a look at about how to build it so that there's each group. So I can go into a bit more detail than that. But just going back to like implementing good habits, some other strategies you can have is like maybe have one day for the discretionary foods. Friday seems to always be the day.
Treat
Go to
day.
canteen on Friday or whatever. But you know, it's about not completely restricting it.
Yeah.
It's about having that balance. So again, setting those kind of, I don't want to say rules, but that expectation at the beginning of the year. I don't take a chocolate Freddo every day. I can take one on a Friday, or I can take one on a Wednesday, or something like that.
Yeah, understanding to have a little treat and everything in moderation.
And just have that negotiation and explain to your child why and it's not having nothing, it's just not having everything. My kids do say to us, why don't we have that? Because it's got a lot of sugar in it, it's got a lot of food additives in it, but why does such and such get to have it? Sweetheart, I'm not his mum, I don't know, maybe they don't know what's in it. It's, you know, everyone is different, so they just need to kind of, it's a good way to try and get them to accept the boundaries that you're setting.
And look, that's what I think is great, because like myself, I don't have that background understanding of all the foods, so to sort of look at it and just go, it's not just pretty and it tastes good, but understanding I can't actually internally see what it's going to do to my body, so knowing if I prevent having that all the time, it'll be a benefit. So that's really good.
My kids now know, like, when I say, you haven't had your lunch, you're hungry, no, I'm not, and then they'll eat, and then they'll, okay, I understand, Mum, because I've explained it to them. You know, you're overreacting, and if you just say to a child, you're overreacting, no, I'm not, you're never overreacting, but you can have that conversation after the fact, or, you know, you had that sugary thing, you didn't feel so good afterwards. I love talking to my kids about the sore tummy that they've got when they've gone to a birthday party. You can explain to them maybe you overdid it. Again, I'm not about being perfect. We live in a busy world. It would be great if we could all have a chef that could prepare everything from scratch, and you could have homemade goods, but it's not really like that. And if you want to do that, you can, that's great. But if not, it doesn't mean that a packaged food means you're letting your child down or you're not providing a good food. And the biggest thing I would have to say is get a good breakfast in, and then doesn't matter so much what happens through the rest of the day. If your child doesn't eat their lunch, or like, you know they've had a good breakfast, and then you can feed them.
It'll get them
later
through
on.
to that.
And the other thing is, don't be afraid to like send leftovers, because lots of kids that have been to daycare would be having hot lunches, so they're used to having those kinds of foods. So pack a thermos, get a you can get little freezer bricks that are like quite thin that can go in the lunchbox to keep things cool.
Yeah, that's right. They've got so much more.
And Instagram and Facebook and all that, there's so much out there now to get inspiration. So I just wanted to kind of give people the basics of what to look for when you're looking out there, or what do I get? Is there enough protein? Is there a little bit of fat in there?
That's fantastic. And what about your tips and thoughts on canteens at school?
Canteen? Well, look, again, I'm a realist. I don't love my kids going to the canteen. But I also think that when I was a kid, you would go and you could buy some chocolate buttons or something like that. So I'm also not against canteens having that kind of food. So going to the canteen actually does give them some independence, and it does teach them about money. So it's not always a bad thing. It's just about, again, putting boundaries and expectations around canteen. And I kind of learnt this from my own experience, which was my son would be coming home saying, my friend bought me this, my friend bought me that. What's your friend's name? I don't know. So he's just scavenging money from kids. And I'm thinking, and then I said, like, you can't do that, you know, you can't, I don't want my child being the one that's scavenging food and money. And on the third day, he came home with some chocolate drips down his shirt. He'd gotten a chocolate paddle pop. So if you completely restrict them, they'll end up being that child that scavenges from other kids. So I don't think there's anything wrong with giving your kids some money to go to the canteen every so often.
Yeah, it's a nice treat, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a nice treat.
And look, I find some canteens are catering more now to a lot of healthier options than back in our day, you know, where you get your good old potato triangles and whatever else was like the carbs. But I think a lot of people leaning towards now the more healthier eating and healthier options.
And again, like, if you're providing them with a good breakfast, you're not providing them with junky food for recess and lunch, you can feel okay about them having a snack from the canteen. It's when they've had a sugary breakfast, they're having a sugary recess, and then they're going to go and have something from the canteen, and then maybe that, like, it's that accumulative effect. If you feel like you're covering the bases, there's room for the discretionary items. So that's probably my my tips for the canteen. Don't deprive the poor kids of canteen.
No, it's nice to have a treat. And what about preparing a child for using a lunchbox?
Okay, well, you probably got some good tips too, because you were a childcare teacher, but just things like practicing opening their containers and the wrappers, because teachers don't want to be opening 30 packets, so practicing that, making sure kids know what to eat when. Some kids will come home and say, I didn't know what to eat for lunch, I didn't know whether it was and they haven't eaten at all. So either talking to them about what's what, or I'm a little bit rogue. I don't really care what you eat when. Like, if you have a sandwich for recess because you're hungry, and then you have a snack for lunch, like, I'm okay with that, because kids are really good at regulating their appetites, really. So you either explain to them what's for what, and some schools implement strategies where they recommend you packing it in a separate bag or something like that, lunch bag, or you just say to them, eat what you want. It's up to that. But that's one thing that I notice a lot, is that kids get overwhelmed and confused about what to eat, and then they don't eat anything because they're worried that they're going to do the wrong thing. Then make up lunch boxes before, when you're going out on weekends and stuff like that, so that they're practicing it. I think, you know, go out and buy the lunch box, practice eating it so that they know what's in there, they've got an expectation, and also trialing different foods. So, for example, some kids won't care if their sandwich goes a bit soggy and they'll eat it. Some kids won't. So it's knowing what you can put on the sandwich and how it's going to last. It's very different making a sandwich at home compared to keeping it in your bag for a few hours and then eating it.
That's exactly right.
Tomato, maybe you don't want to put tomato on there, or avocado might go a bit brown, but some kids don't care.
That's right.
So it's about getting them used to that, and just getting them involved in choices. What do you like? Did you like this one? Did you like that one? We're going to put some protein. What protein should we have? You know, my kids have heard the word protein so many times because they keep saying, because they keep wanting to snack, and then keep wanting to snack because they're not getting filled up. And I constantly, because they're at that age where they can help themselves to food now, and they might just go and get a piece of bread. I'm like, where's your protein? You need your protein. So it's just about getting them involved. The choices, as I said, if you have a repertoire of 10, 20 different snacks that they can then choose from, at least it's still within the realm of what you're happy for them to have.
That's brilliant. And it's nice too if they're a little bit part of the process, because then they can help pick and choose what they want. It's really exciting, isn't it? Oh, that's wonderful.
It breeds a little bit more compliance.
Yeah, that's it. And what about your take-home message for parents?
You know, I think it can be very stressful. You've got kids that don't necessarily fit the box, or you know what you need to feed them, but it's not always that easy. So they're all different. They all, you know, not one size fits all with them. So take the information that I've given today and just provide it in a way that fits your child and your family and your lifestyle. So take the pressure and the anxiety out of being perfect, and just do what works for your family.
I think that's a beautiful message. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And where can people find you?
So my website is healthybodynutrition.com.au, and my socials are... I was really excited when I got registered the business name because no one had taken it yet, but then I went to socials and realised that Healthy Body Nutrition was already taken. So it's actually heal.thy.body nutrition, which is kind of a play on healthy and heal thy body. So that's where you can find me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. It's always amazing seeing and catching up with you.
Thank you. And guys, best of luck with school.
Yes.
Bye.
Very exciting.